Hi, my name's Anthony. I'm one of the pastors at Innovation Church, and I just wanted to thank you so much for taking time to check out our YouTube channel. Here you'll find all sorts of videos that we hope that are encouraging to you and help you understand what a relationship with Jesus can look like. If this has been inspiring or helped you in any way, do us a favor, hit that share button, put it on Facebook, Twitter, link it to Instagram, whatever you can do. We want to get the word out about what Jesus is doing right here in Akron. If you ever want to come see us in person, we're at the I Promise School every single Sunday, 400 West Market Street, right here in Akron. And if you have any questions or you need anything, feel free to contact me. My email is anthony@innovationakron.com. Once again, thanks for checking us out on YouTube. Hope you have a blessed day.
Hey, so we are in an awesome series. We are in the book of Galatians. I love everything that Paul writes. Like, he is one of the most powerful writers. He is one of the most powerful and influential people who have helped build the church, right? And so I love that we're in this series. I love that I get to be part of it. But if I'm completely honest with you guys, I have been convicted in this book, right? This book is a little bit different than some of Paul's other writings. In his other writings, he's writing to a specific church, but in Galatians, he's actually writing to like a group of people. And that's pretty cool because he has a whole lot to say. And the coolest thing about Paul is that like he has this ability to lay these truth bombs that when you hear them, you go, well, duh, like that's obvious, but somehow I just never knew that. Like somehow I was missing that. And so this whole book has been so convicting to me because Paul is just basically saying, you're kind of getting it wrong. And here's what the real message is, right? The whole book of Galatians, just so you guys know, it's all about we are free. We are free, right? We're free from our sin. We're free from condemnation. We're free from other people and their opinions of us. We are free, right? And so that's just so powerful. So this morning we're continuing in this book. We're going to be in the 4th chapter, verses 8 through 20. If you've got a Bible, I encourage you to jump in there. If you have your Bible app, that's just as great. If you don't have that, that's okay. We're going to have it up on the screen. But before we go any further, I want to go ahead and pray, okay? Because we believe prayer changes things, and it's an opportunity to communicate with God. Lord, we just thank you so much for this morning. We are so thankful that we have the freedom to gather together. We are so thankful that you are so in love with us, that you have allowed us to gather together. And God, we are so thankful that we have the opportunity to learn more about you so that we can be more effective for you. God, we give you this message. We give you this morning. And God, I just pray our lives are changed. And it's in your name we pray. Amen. I'm going to go ahead and apologize up front. I am kind of recovering from a cold, plus I'm pregnant, so there's going to be a lot of deep breathing. Like I'm concerned about the podcast. It's going to sound like Darth Vader, which I referenced the last time I was here. It's nothing negative, nothing positive, but nothing negative. All right. All right, so, ouch. All right, hey guys, I've got a question for you. How many of you guys have ever heard somebody say, or maybe you've even asked somebody like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? Or maybe more for our age here, it's what are your goals? Like, what are you striving for? Right? Those questions are fine. In fact, I work at a school. I work in special education, and there is a heavy emphasis, especially at age 14, to start talking about transition, to start talking about what are your goals? Like, how are we going to work together to meet your goals, right? Like, what do you want to do with your life? And that's a fine question. That's a safe question, and the answer to that is fine. But what happens is sometimes we get so focused on what our goals are that we start to get our priorities out of whack, right? So for some of us, we start pursuing that career and we can't stop pursuing that career. Like, it becomes like our driving force. It is our central focus. And without meaning to, we allow our career to become like a god in our life. Right? Like, we accidentally start worshiping those things that we've set our goals for. And we know we're worshiping something when it's the center of our lives. Like, we know we are worshiping something when that is the central focus of what's going on. Okay? Maybe some of you guys are in here going, you know what? Honestly, I don't even like my job. So, like, that doesn't resonate. And that's okay. All right? I'll pray for you. I hope you find some place that you love. That is just such a good husband. Hold on just 5 seconds. I heard that breathing. Thank you, honey. Right, so maybe it's not a job. Like, maybe you hate your job, that's cool, whatever. All right, maybe instead it is like you love technology, right? Like you're the type of person that, you know those people that when the new iPhone comes out, they wait in line for days, right? Like they sacrifice themselves and their well-being and their safety for like a rectangle, right? Like that's what it is. I'm a little bitter, my phone is broken, so all technology is evil to me right now, but that's okay. Maybe it's not technology, maybe it's relationships, friendships, whatever it is. Like you are constantly pursuing that next best, right? And nothing's wrong with having goals. Nothing is wrong with pursuing things. It's when we get those priorities out of whack. It's when we start to say, this is all I'm thinking about and all I'm striving for. It's when we set that as our worship, and we know it's our worship when that's the center of our lives. And here's what Paul says in Galatians, and in this specific, what we're about to read. Here's what he's saying. He is saying, the only thing worthy of being the center of your life is Jesus. Like that is the only thing worthy of being the center of your life. So like I said, hey, I love this book. I love this chapter. I love the verses we're about to read. But it's not enough for me to say that I love it. Let's read it together, okay? I sound like a duck, right? I sound like, I hear it. No, not a duck. I'm not good with animals, all right? I sound strange, and I'm sorry for that. That's okay. Hey, guys, remember, we are in Galatians chapter 4. We're starting in verse 8. We're going to go all the way to 20, okay? Paul says this, he says, before you Gentiles knew God, you were slaves to so-called gods that don't even exist. So now that you know God, or should I say, now that God knows you, why do you want to go back again and become slaves once more to the weak and useless spiritual principles of this world? You're trying to earn favor with God by observing certain days or months or seasons or years. I fear for you. Perhaps all of my hard work for you is for nothing. Dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to live as I do in freedom from these things, for I have become like you Gentiles, free from those laws. You didn't mistreat me when I first preached to you. Surely you remember that I was sick when I first brought you the good news. But even though my condition tempted you to reject me, you didn't despise me or turn me away. No, you took me in and you cared for me as though I were an angel of God or even Christ Jesus himself. Where is that joyful and grateful spirit you had then? I'm sure you would have given me you would have taken out your own eyes and given them to me if it was possible. Have I now become your enemy because I'm telling you the truth? Those false teachers are so eager to win your favor, but their intentions are no good. They're trying to shut you off from me so that you'll pay attention to only them. If someone is eager to do good for you, that's all right. But let them do that for you all the time, not just when I'm with you. Oh, my dear children, I feel as though I'm going through labor pains for you again, and they'll continue until Christ is fully developed in your lives. I wish I were with you right now so that I could change my tone, but this distance, I don't know how else to help you. Paul is awesome. Like, Paul is awesome. He is one of the most passionate people because he loves the church and he wants to build the kingdom of God. And I don't know if you're like me, I love passionate people. Like, love them. I get swept away in people's passion. When I was in high school, my history teacher put together a video for the armed forces, okay? And she did all of the branches of military, and I was so swept away by that emotion. I leaned over to my friend and I said, I think I need to enlist. Yeah. Right? She didn't respond that way. She just kind of went, okay, thank God. By the next period, I realized how terrible that would be for America. Like, I'm a daughter of a man from the military. Guys, I love you, and I will protect you with hugs. But if someone comes in here and wants to hurt you, I'm going to go ahead and step away and let someone stronger get in the middle, okay? Because honestly, I'm not your girl, right? I'm not, like, I'll scream, I'll do all these, like, I'll make a scene. We'll have fun with that, right? But you know, this isn't a gun show, right? Like, I'm not capable of being part of the armed forces, but I get swept away in this emotion, right? I get excited. Sheena's loving this moment together. All right, like, I get excited by people who are excited, and so I love Paul. And I love this section of verses because he is so passionate. But maybe you're also like me, and I get swept away in the passion that sometimes I'm listening and I go, I am there, I am with you. I have no idea what you just said, but I'm there, right? And maybe you're like me. This morning we heard that. We know Paul is excited. We know he is passionate, right? And we're swept away by it, but we have no idea what he said, right? And if that's the case, hey, we're going to break it down this morning. So let's start here in verse 8. This is what he says. He says, before you Gentiles knew God, you were slaves to so-called gods that don't even exist. You were slaves to gods that don't even exist. Here's what Paul is saying. He is saying, you are trying to earn it. You're trying to earn it. And guess what? What does Paul teach us? He says we're free, right? Like that's not the gospel, right? We see this beautiful illustration in the book of Luke. Jesus tells us this story. It's called the prodigal son. Are you guys familiar with the prodigal son? Even if you are, I'm going to tell it again, okay? Because I love this story, okay? There's this father, and he has two sons, okay? The older son is the faithful one. He's the one who is consistent. He's the one who's working hard. He is the one who shows up, is on time. He's doing everything he should do. Then we got the younger son, and we'll say he's wild, right? Like that's the best we can say there. So the younger son shows up to the father and he says, hey, I know I have an inheritance, but I don't want to wait for it. Go ahead and give it to me now, right? And so the father, out of love, he gives him his inheritance, and that young son does what we all expect someone to do when they suddenly come into money. He goes and he squanders it, right? Like he goes and lives recklessly. He does everything he shouldn't do, right? And he loses it. And he gets to the point where he is so desperate that he realizes, like, I don't know what else to do. So he realizes, I got to go back to dad and I got to grovel. Like, he is expecting to take this lowly position and basically ask his dad, like, even if I can be a servant, will you take me back? And what's beautiful is he goes back to his father, and his father doesn't even wait for him to come all the way to him. His father actually runs after him. And I think that's so powerful, right? Like God is always there. He is excited. The father says this thing. He says, this is my son. He was lost. Now he's found. He was dead. Now he's alive. Let's celebrate, right? Like he says, here, have these jewels, have this nice clothes. He says, let's kill the fatted calf. Here's what that means. We're about to party, and we're going to order all the pizza there is. Like, we're getting Papa John's, we're getting Domino's, we're getting Romeo's, we're getting it all. And that RC Cola, not at our house. We're getting Coca-Cola, right? He's saying, let's hold nothing back. Like, let's celebrate, right? He's back. I'm excited, right? And that's awesome. But here's the thing. There's another son, right? There's the older son, the one who's consistent, the one who's shown up, the one who's been doing the work. And we've all been there, have we not? Right? Where we're showing up, we're doing what we should do, we're working hard, and the wrong person's getting celebrated, right? And you know, okay. There's gonna be a point here. Okay. The wrong person's getting celebrated, and you know what this older son does? He says, what the heck, Dad? Like, are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? I've been doing the right thing here, and he's the one getting celebrated. Where's my party, right? Where's my party? I've been saying that, right? I've been there. I spent a good, solid few years there, all right? I love what his father says. He says, everything I have is yours. Everything I have is yours. Here's the translation. You missed it. What I have is yours, not because you show up, not because you're working hard, not because you're doing all the things you should be doing. That's awesome, and I'm so appreciative, and I love it, and you're better because of it. But everything I have is yours simply because you're my son, simply because you're in my family. Guys, Jesus sets us free. Jesus sets us free. We don't earn his favor. We don't earn his love. It's ours for the taking anytime we want because we're his sons and daughters. not because we're doing the right thing, though that's important, and it absolutely makes us better, and it makes heaven better. But we have that love because we're his children. It's just that simple. Verse 9 says, so now that you know God, or should I say, now that God knows you, why do you want to go back again and become slaves once more to the weak and useless spiritual principles of this world? You're trying to earn favor with God by observing certain days or months or seasons or years. I fear for you. Perhaps all of my hard work is for nothing. So now that you know God, or should I say, now that God knows you, here's what Paul is saying. He's saying, it is awesome that you know God. That's awesome. But what matters is God knows you. The beginning of a real relationship is being known. And here's the thing, guys. God knows you. Like, let that sink in. God knows you. Okay, that means he knows the things you put out there, right? He knows your Instagram highlights, but he also knows those disgusting thoughts you have every once in a while. And he also knows those evil things you've entertained. He also knows the things you've done that you knew you shouldn't do, but you still did anyway, because for whatever reason, that was the decision that was made. He knows you. But here's the thing. He still loves you, fully knowing you. He still loves you. And here's the best part. He promises to love you forever. Forever. Not because you earned it, but because you're his son and his daughter. That should give us so much security. Like, that should make us feel so confident and secure of our relationship, because his love for us is consistent. It is not based on our merit. It is not based on anything about us. It's because we're simply his children, and it's forever. Like, when I think of relationships and the most vulnerable place you can be, like the most, if it's opposite of committed, it's not committed. That's the word we'll use. Okay, and grammar with Katie. All right, so, right, the most uncommitted, like the most insecure place you can be relationally, I honestly, I think it's dating, right? Like, maybe you're there, maybe you've been there. Like, you don't, when you are dating, you're not leading with your baggage, right? Like, you're not showing up on date one going, hey, here's everything wrong in my life, right? Like, no, you're showing up, you got your nice clothes on, you're putting on like the best makeup or not makeup, whatever, you know, like you're showing up, you're leading with your best. Like, when you're dating, you pretend like you have no digestive system, because you do not poop while you date, right? You guys are trying, I don't even do that anyway. All right, hey, listen, like if you're a nose picker, you're waiting until you get home. You're not doing that on the date, right? Like, you are leading with your best, right? Like, you're saving that other stuff for not then, right? And Anthony's in the background going, I am so embarrassed to be married to her. Talked about boogers and poop. Let's keep going. All right, so listen. Preach it. All right, hey, so you're leading with your best. You're not putting your baggage out, right? Like, you are just showing your highlight reel. I've been married now for 11 and a half years, and I can honestly, yeah, amen. And yes, I'll take your prayers. That was funny, right? Okay, thanks. So I've been married for 11 and a half years, right? And I can honestly say we have never used the word divorce, and I can honestly tell you we will never use that word, because we stood up in front of God. We made a commitment to each other and a promise to God, and this is what we said. I said, Anthony, I know you. I'm looking right at you, okay? I know you. He's touching his collarbone, and I'm so sick. I know you. That means I know everything. No one knows you the way I know you. And I still choose to love you. And I'm going to love you forever. He can be confident and secure in my love for him, because it is not based on anything he does or doesn't do. It is based on the simple fact that that is a guaranteed right of his. And that's where we are with Christ. We can't earn it. Paul is saying, You're missing it. You're trying to earn it. It's given to you. It's all yours, simply because you're his sons and daughters. 1 Corinthians 8:3 says, but the person who loves God is the one whom God recognizes. The person who loves God is the one whom God recognizes. Here's what that means. The beginning of loving God is understanding that he knows you and being secure of his love for you. The only way we can truly love God is to get that and find our security in that. Let that be our grounding, okay? And based on that love, we then are free to love other people. And that's a response of the love that he has shown us. And so the question is, hey, how do we love other people? Like, what does that even look like, right? Because as Christ followers, as Christians, we are called to love other people. Like, that is a mandate, okay? So how do we even do that? Like, what does that look like? Well, I'm so glad you asked, because Paul addresses that in this section of verses. Verse 12, he says this. He says, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to live as I do. To live as I do. Here's what Paul is saying. He is saying we need to lead and love with transparency. We need to lead and love with transparency. A question we need to be asking ourselves is this: is my life worth imitating? Paul isn't saying this from a point of pride. He's not saying live as I do because I'm so awesome. He is saying we need to live in love, or lead in love with transparency. We need to make sure that our words line up with our actions. And because today is Pastor Appreciation, I get to gloat on my husband, and I can honestly tell you guys, the man that you see on Sunday morning is the same man Tuesday night, Wednesday in the afternoon, Thursday at any obscure time of the day. Like, he is consistent. He is steadfast. He is always someone, when I think of the fact that I have two sons, only one's in here, don't worry. When I have two sons, right? Listen, it's big, and I was surprised too. All right, so when I think of the fact that I'm raising two boys, and I have the example of my husband, I'm in awe of that. I'm so thankful for that. That means the world to me, because I can honestly say he has a life that is worth imitating. And so when we're asking ourselves that, hey, some of us, we're going to get to the place where the answer is no. Okay, and if that's your answer, if you say, is my life worth imitating, and your answer is no, don't get stuck there. Okay? Don't get stuck there. Ask the next question. So what am I going to do about it? Let's talk, legitimately, not right now, okay, because that'd be awkward, but after service, let's talk. Let's get a game plan. Let's talk about this, because here's the deal. We should all be leading and loving with transparency. Our lives should be worth imitating. And like I said before, right, it kind of sounds like Paul might be a little prideful because he's saying, live as I do, but I chopped off the verse. We're going to continue that verse, okay, because that's not a point of pride. Here's what he says. The whole verse says this. It says, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to live as I do, in freedom from these things, for I have become like you, Gentiles, free from those laws. You didn't mistreat me when I first preached to you. So he says, I have become like you. We're called first to lead in love with transparency, but we are also called to lead in love with flexibility. Speaking of flexibility, give me just a moment. Okay. So lead in love with transparency. Is my life worth imitating? Lead in love with flexibility. The Bible tells us that Paul became everything, or was all things to all people. Okay, and that's a confusing thing to say. What does that actually mean? It means Paul understood what it meant to be a family. Last week, Pastor Anthony talked to us. He said, our faith makes us family, okay? So when we're family, we actually live together. Not in the same house. I love you guys, and I've got a futon with your name on it for 2 days. But my dad has this saying, it goes something like this: a fish and a guest Oh, I'm gonna mess it up, but that's okay. A guest is like a fish. They both stink after 3 days. That's a good one. Ba-dum-bump. My son's named after him. All right, so lead in love with flexibility. Paul became all things to all people. Here's what that means. He understood what it meant to actually do life together. Like, our faith makes us family, and here's what that means. It means my preferences don't determine our relationship. Okay? Here's the reality. If you want to watch a sci-fi movie, I'll show up with popcorn. That's my biggest contribution, all right? Because that's not my gig. I'm there. I love you. We'll enjoy it together. I'm going to have a lot of funny dialogue in my head, just so you know. That's not my gig, but here's the deal. That's community. Right? It is not about what I like. It is not about what's important to me. It is all about the relationship, right? Paul understood faith. Our faith makes us family. That means my preferences don't determine our relationship. That means we're going to live together. We're going to raise our children together. We're going to eat together. Like, when you're going through hard times, I'm going through them with you because I love you, because you're my family, right? A question that we really need to ask ourselves when thinking about flexibility is this. What am I putting out there that could be negatively impacting someone's eternity? What am I putting out there that could be negatively impacting someone's eternity? And I know we all want to say, nothing, Katie, not a single thing. Just get on our Facebook for a minute. Is your Facebook clouded with nothing but like disgusting stuff? Because I'm going to let you know, I don't want to hang out with that. Like, that is not attractive to me. And if it's not attractive to me, it's not going to be attractive to other people. If your Facebook or your conversations are always geared to what's wrong in your life and how hard your life has been and all of the sorrow you're going through, hey, here's the deal. I love you, and I want to go through it too. But that's all about you. That's not eternal. If your Facebook or what you're putting out there is all about your political views, and the thing about America right now is this: if you don't believe what I believe, you're just stupid. That's ridiculous, guys. Brandon says amen. And we'll pray for you. No, but the reality, guys, hey, the reality is this. In America, this is democracy. We don't have to agree to love each other. Right? Honestly, I don't care who you voted for. I really don't. Because in America, we both were right. That's democracy. But here's the deal. If my Facebook is clouded with all my political views and how stupid the opposing party is, no one wants to be around that. That is not eternal. What we are here for is eternity. And if we're clouding our social media and who we are with what is not important, we're missing it. So Paul says, hey, if we're going to love people, we're going to first lead in love with transparency. Is my life worth imitating? We're going to lead in love with flexibility, becoming all things to all people, remembering my preferences don't determine our relationship. Paul goes on in verse 13, he says, surely you remember that I was sick when I first brought you the good news. But even though my condition tempted you to reject me, you didn't despise me or turn me away. No, you took me in and you cared for me as though I were an angel from God or even Christ Jesus himself. That's some nice hospitality, right? Here's the deal, guys. Paul had an itinerary. He had a plan of where he was ministering. And guess what was not on his plan? Galatia. He was not planning on stopping there. That was not his journey. Some translations say this: because of my sickness I was with you, or my sickness brought me to you. Here's what we find out. Often, the detours in our life are God's destination. The detours in our life are God's destination. Paul was not planning on going to Galatia. He got sick, landed there, and as a result, he was able to minister to people. There are people in heaven and generations of faith as a result of him being detoured. One of the hardest things to do as a Christian is to wrestle the thought of suffering. That is hard. The question, how could a loving God allow so much suffering in the world? Like, that's a real question. And quite honestly, that's a whole series, okay? So I'm not even going to try to unpack the whole thing, but here's what I want to say. The Bible is very clear in Romans 8:28. It says, and we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who God loves, or loves God. I'm so sorry, let me read that again. And we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purposes for them. God does not promise to bless us by taking away our suffering. He promises to bless us through our suffering. Often our detours are God's destination. We see this so clearly in Paul's life. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 7 through 10, Paul actually describes that he has a thorn in his side, a thorn in his flesh. We don't know what that is. Like, it's not probably a real actual thorn, but he is describing like this consistent affliction in his life. We don't know, like some scholars believe that that could actually be like a physical condition, like a chronic illness that maybe has some flare-ups. Some scholars believe, hey, that might have even been like a mental health issue, like maybe some depression or anxiety. We're not sure. He doesn't bring it up so that we can know what it was. He brings it up to know how God brought him through it. Because here's what Paul says. He says, in my weakness, he's made great. Right? He says, I'm actually thankful for this consistent affirmity because I know that his grace is sufficient for me because I cannot do this on my own. This is not something that I am physically, emotionally, whatever it is, capable of doing. But guess what? In spite of it, God uses me, and in spite of it, God is doing something great. Because Paul was one of the greatest church planters of all time. But he had a condition that consistently afflicted him. Often, the detours in our life are God's destination. So Paul is saying here, we need to lead and love through hardships. Lead and love through hardships. So he says, we're going to lead and love through transparency. Is our life worth imitating? We're going to lead and love through, I'm so sorry. We're going to lead and love through flexibility, becoming all things to all people, remembering that my preferences don't determine our relationship. And we're going to lead and love through hardships. Often, my detours are God's destination. Paul goes on in verse 15, he says, where is that joyful and grateful spirit you felt then? I am sure that you would have taken out your own eyes and given them to me if that would have been possible. Have I now become your enemy because I'm telling you the truth? Those false teachers are so eager to win your favor, but their intentions are not good. They're trying to shut you off from me so that you'll pay attention only to them. If someone is eager to do good for you, that is fine, but let them do it for you all the time, not just when I'm with you. Here's what Paul is saying. He's saying we need to lead and love with truth. Lead and love with truth. What Paul is saying here is he's saying, hey guys, those teachers that are with you right now, they're not interested in developing you into a real Christian. Like, they're not interested in your eternity. They are interested in creating a fan base for themselves. What is that term? They're blowing smoke. I hope that's appropriate. I got nervous when I just said it out loud. Something with hot air, okay? Like, they are puffing you up. They're saying what you want to hear. I know we're going to just have to do so much chopping with this podcast, and that's okay. Right? Like, they are interested in making themselves famous. They are not interested in your eternity. And here's the deal, guys. This life is not about us. It's not about us. Here's what this life is about. Connecting people to Jesus and making heaven crowded. That's what this life is about. There's nothing wrong with being famous. If God gives you a platform and your name is great in that way and you don't let it go to your heart or your head, that's awesome. But what matters is, are you focused on making a fan base, or are you focused on making disciples of Jesus Christ who are going to heaven? Because this life is not about us. It's not about us. It's about connecting people to Jesus and making heaven crowded. So Paul says we're going to lead in love with transparency. Is my life worth imitating? We're going to lead in love with flexibility, becoming all things to all people and recognizing that my preferences don't determine our relationship, and asking ourselves, what about me could be affecting someone's eternity? We're going to lead in love through hardships, remembering that often our detours are God's destination. And we're going to lead in love with truth. This life is not about us. It's about connecting people to Jesus and making heaven crowded. And Paul finishes up with verse 19. He says, "Oh, my dear children, I feel as though I'm going through labor pains for you again, and they'll continue until Christ is fully developed in your lives. I wish I were there with you now so that I could change my tone, but at this distance, I don't even know how else to help you." Paul is saying here, we need to lead in love with sacrifice. Lead in love with sacrifice. I think it's absolutely beautiful and amazing that Paul uses the illustration of like labor to describe developing and launching out, like sending out new Christians. I think that's absolutely incredible because there is no greater sacrifice, and it's not just because I'm going through it. Like, there is no greater sacrifice than a mother growing a child, and then, this is gross, but I don't know another term, birthing the child. Like there is no greater sacrifice. I can tell you guys, with this baby, solid 16 weeks, I thought I was going to die. Like, when a saltine cracker makes you question, like, your well-being, like, that's an issue, right? Like, you truly, as a mother, you are sacrificing your well-being for another person in every sense of the word. And I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, because I'm certainly not. I'm so incredibly thankful for this gift. I'm beyond thankful for God's generosity and his kindness. And I absolutely love the process, and I love the intimacy of knowing my child in a way that my husband doesn't yet. But here's the deal. When 40 weeks are up, this kid's out of here. Like, doctor or no doctor, I'm finding someone who gets him out, right? Because my goal is not to keep him here. My goal is that he's going to live independently outside of me. And that's what discipleship is. Like, that's what connecting people to Jesus is. We sacrifice ourselves. One of the greatest honors that Anthony and I have is when you guys give us a call and you say, "Hey, I'm struggling. Can you sit with me? Can you talk to me? I've got these questions. Can we talk about them?" Like, our greatest honor is having those real moments together. That is the greatest honor of ministry, period. But that comes as a sacrifice, because what happens is, hey, if you call us at midnight, I'm going to be tired, but I'm going to drop what I do to connect with you, because heaven and eternity are far more important to me than my sleep. They are, but I'm very tired these days, and so I'm going to be really honest. You might hear a little hesitation in my voice, but I'll be there. It'll be uncomfortable, but I'll be there. No, I'm just kidding. That's just me being silly, right? Like, we sacrifice ourselves to connect people to Jesus, but the goal isn't that we're walking with you hand in hand through everything. The goal is that you are living independently, even away from our discipleship, because the goal of discipleship, like making believers of Jesus, like making followers of Jesus, is this: we disciple people to become disciples who disciple other people. Okay? It's a chain. The goal is that we are working together, sacrificing ourselves so that we can grow together, so that one day you sacrifice yourself so that you can grow together with someone else. That's discipleship. That's what the church is about. So Paul here, in these 12 verses, lays this incredible groundwork. He says, God knows you. He knows you, everything about you, the good, the bad, the hideous, all of it. And he loves you still. And he promises to love you forever in spite of you. You didn't earn it. You're his sons and daughters. His love is consistent regardless of your understanding of it. It is there and it is consistent. And out of our understanding of that, our acceptance and security of knowing that he loves us, then we can love other people. And we do that by first leading and loving with transparency, asking ourselves, is my life worth imitating? Then we lead in love with flexibility, becoming all things to all people, remembering that our preferences don't determine our relationship, and asking ourselves, what am I putting out there that could be negatively impacting someone's eternity? Then we lead in love through hardships. Often our detours are God's destinations. We lead in love with truth. This life is not about us. It's just not. It's about connecting people to Jesus and making heaven crowded. And finally, we are to lead in love with sacrifice. And when I think of sacrifice, I can't help but think of what Jesus did for us on the cross. That's what this is all about. It means nothing without that.